In the thick jungle air of Mesoamerica, beneath a sky painted with stars, a scribe carved numbers into stone. His hands moved with purpose. The date he recorded was not just a day, it was part of a cycle older than memory. It fit into a system so precise it could predict eclipses and mark time across thousands of years. This was the Maya calendar. Not one calendar, but many. Woven together, they formed a web of time that still puzzles scholars. How did a people without metal tools or wheels track time with such accuracy? The answer lies not in magic, but in observation, math, and belief. Their world ran on cycles, and those cycles shaped everything: war, harvest, birth, death. To understand the Maya calendar is to step into a mind that saw time not as a straight line, but as a spiral. A spiral that returns, a spiral that repeats, a spiral that demands attention. This is the story of how they did it, and why it still matters. Long before the arrival of Europeans, the Maya built cities in the heart of the jungle. These were not simple villages. They were centers of learning, religion, and power. Towers rose above the canopy. Temples stood on broad platforms. Palaces housed rulers and scribes. The people farmed maize, traded goods, and honored their gods. But what set the Maya apart was their understanding of time. While other cultures marked days by sunrise and sunset, the Maya measured time in cycles that stretched over centuries. They did not invent clocks or watches. They used the sky. They watched the sun, moon, and planets. They counted the days. They recorded the patterns. And from this they built calendars more accurate than any in Europe at the time. The Maya lived in what is now southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador. Their civilization reached its height between 250 and 900 CE. This period is known as the Classic Period. During these centuries, the Maya developed writing, art, architecture, and science. Their achievements were not sudden. They grew over time. The roots of their calendar system go back to earlier cultures, like the Olmec. These people lived centuries before the Maya. They may have started the idea of counting days in long cycles. The Maya took those ideas and refined them. They turned time into a science. At the heart of their system was the concept of cycles. The Maya did not see time as a road that stretches forward and never turns back. They saw it as a wheel that turns and returns. Each turn brought back familiar forces. Each cycle held power. This belief shaped everything they did. Births, deaths, harvests, wars, all were timed to match the rhythm of the cosmos. The Maya believed that events repeated when the same combination of days returned. If a great king was crowned on a certain day sign, then that same day in a future cycle might bring another leader. If a drought came during a particular Haab month, people watched for it again when that month returned. Time was not just counted, it was respected, it was feared, it was honored. The calendar was not invented in a single moment. It grew over centuries. It was shaped by priests, farmers, rulers, and skywatchers. Each group needed it for different reasons, but all agreed on one thing: time was sacred. To ignore its patterns was to invite chaos. To follow them was to live in balance with the gods. The calendar was not a human creation alone. It was a gift from the divine. It revealed the will of the gods through the motion of the sun, moon, and planets. Those who understood it could speak to the heavens. There were three main calendars the Maya used. These did not replace one another. They ran at the same time. Like gears in a machine, they turned together. When all three aligned, the moment was powerful. This system gave the Maya a way to mark short events and long ages with equal care. The first was the Haab, a 365-day solar calendar. It followed the path of the sun. It had 18 months. Each month had 20 days. That made 360 days. Then came 5 extra days. These were called Wayeb. They stood outside the regular year. They were not part of any month. The Haab began with the month Pop, which likely marked the start of the rainy season in some regions. The names of the months often referred to agricultural or religious events. Sip may mean deer hunting. Mol could mean water gathering or clouds. Yaxkin meant first sun, and may have marked the dry season. The Wayeb days were feared. People believed the veil between the world of humans and the world of spirits grew thin. Demons could cross over. Illness and bad luck were common. Most activities stopped. People did not leave their homes if they could avoid it. They did not start new projects. They did not cut their hair. They fasted and made small offerings to protect themselves. Some wore masks to confuse evil spirits. The Wayeb was a time of caution. When it ended, a new year began with rituals of renewal. Homes were cleaned. New fire was brought from the temple. The cycle started again.
The Haab was practical. It helped farmers know when to clear fields, plant maize, and harvest. It matched the solar year closely, but not exactly. The true solar year is about 365.25 days long. The Haab had no leap days, so every 4 years it fell 1 day behind. Over 120 years, it drifted by about a month. Yet the Maya did not change it. They accepted the slow drift. For their needs, it was close enough. The calendar was not meant to be perfect. It was meant to be stable. Changing it would have broken the rhythm. Instead, they relied on other signs, like the flowering of certain trees or the call of birds, to fine-tune planting. The Haab gave the framework. Nature gave the details. The second calendar was the Tzlokin, a 260-day sacred cycle. This was the heart of religious life. It was not tied to the sun or moon. It did not follow the seasons. It was a ritual calendar. It was made of 20 named days that repeated in order. Each day had a name: Imix, Ik, Akbal, Kan, Chikchan, and so on. These names were linked to gods, animals, and natural forces. Imix was connected to water and creation. Kan meant maize and stood for growth. Chikchan meant serpent and was tied to healing and the sky. Each of these 20-day names was paired with a number from 1 to 13. The count went from 1 to 13, then started again at 1. So the first day was 1 Imix. The next was 2 Ik, then 3 Akbal, and so on. When the numbers reached 13, the next day was 1 Ben, not 14. This created a cycle of 260 unique combinations. 13 times 20 equals 260. After 260 days, the same day sign returned. This cycle never changed. It ran year after year, century after century. The origin of the 260-day count is still a mystery. There is no single natural event that lasts exactly 260 days. But several ideas have been proposed. One is that it matches the human gestation period. From conception to birth is about 260 days. In a culture that valued life and rebirth, this link makes sense. Another idea is that it reflects the time between planting and harvesting maize in the highlands of Guatemala. The growing season there can be around 260 days. A third theory is that it comes from the movement of the sun. In parts of the Maya world, the sun passes directly overhead twice a year. The time between these zenith passages is about 260 days in some locations. The Tzlokin may have begun as a way to track this solar event. Whatever its origin, the Tzlokin became central to Maya life. Priests used it to decide when to hold ceremonies. A day like 1 Ajao was especially sacred. It meant first ruler and was linked to creation and kingship. Major events, like the dedication of temples, were often scheduled on this day. Other days were dangerous. 113 Ahau was seen as a day of endings. It was powerful, but risky. Children were named after their birthday in the Tzlokin. A boy born on Ben might be called He of the Reed. A girl born on Ix might be named Jaguar Woman. These names were not just labels. They carried meaning. They suggested the child's character, strengths, and fate. A person born on a day ruled by the rain god might be expected to care for water rituals. One born on a war day might be trained as a warrior. Divination was a key use of the Tzlokin. Priests acted as gods. They would ask the calendar what a certain day would bring. They used tools like corn kernels, stones, or crystals to cast lots. The answer depended on the day sign and number. For example, a journey on 4 Khan might succeed. The same journey on 8 Men might fail. People consulted the calendar before marriages, battles, and building projects. It was a way to avoid disaster and gain favor from the gods. The third calendar was the long count. This was different from the other two. It did not repeat. It moved forward in a straight line. It was used to record exact dates over long periods. While the Haab and Tzlokin cycled every 52 years, the time it takes for both to align, the long count could track dates thousands of years apart. This allowed the Maya to record history with precision. The long count was based on a modified base 20 number system. Most numbers used 20 as a base, but the second level used 18. This was done to make 1 ton, 360 days, close to a solar year. The units were 1 keen equals 1 day, 1 winal was 20 keen, 20 days, 1 tun was 18 winal, 360 days, 1 katun was 20 tun, 7,200 days, about 19.7 years. 1 baktun was 20 katun, 144,000 days, about 394 years. Larger units existed, but were rarely used. A piktun was 20 baktun, or nearly 8,000 years. These were used for mythological time, not historical events. Dates were written as a series of numbers separated by dots or bars. Bars stood for 5, dots stood for 1. So the date 9.16.3.8.18 meant 9 baktun, 16 katun, 3 tun, 8 winar, 18 keen. This system allowed the Maya to write dates far in the past and future. A ruler might record a battle from 10 katun ago, or he might dedicate a monument to an event 50 years ahead. The long count gave them a sense of deep history and long-term planning.
The starting point of the long count was a date in the distant past, 13.0.0.0.0. This was set as August 11, 3114 BCE in the modern Gregorian calendar. This date was not chosen at random. It was the mythological moment when the current world was created. According to Maya belief, 3 earlier worlds had come and gone. Each had ended in disaster, flood, fire, or collapse. The gods had tried and failed to make humans before. On this date, they succeeded. The first true humans were formed from maize. This story is told in the Popovu, a sacred text written down in the 16th century but based on older traditions. The long count did not end in 2012. That was a misunderstanding. On December 21, 2012, the count reached 13.0.0.0.0 again. This marked the end of a Baktun cycle. It was a time of renewal, not destruction. The Maya expected the world to continue. Inscriptions from the Classic period show dates far beyond 13 Baktum. One monument at Palenque records a date over 4,000 years in the future. The idea that the Maya predicted the end of the world in 2012 came from modern speculation, not ancient texts. The creation of these calendars was not the work of one genius. It was the result of slow, careful work over hundreds of years. Scribes and priests were the keepers of time. They were trained from childhood. They learned to read and write glyphs. They memorized the cycles. They observed the sky. They recorded what they saw. Knowledge was passed from master to student. Errors were corrected over time. The system improved with each generation. Astronomy was not separate from religion. The sky was the realm of the gods. The sun was Kinich Aho. The moon was a goddess who controlled water and fertility. Venus was Kawil Aho, the god of war. When Venus rose as the morning star, it signaled a time for battle. When it disappeared, it was said to travel through the underworld. The movements of these bodies were messages. To read them was to speak with the gods. One of the most important celestial bodies in the Maya calendar was Venus. The Maya tracked it with extraordinary care. They knew it appeared in the east before sunrise for about 250 days. Then it vanished for about 50 days. It reappeared in the west after sunset for another 250 days. Then it vanished again. This full cycle takes about 584 days. The Dresden Codex contains a Venus table that tracks this cycle over 5 rounds, about 8 years. The table marks each appearance and disappearance. It also warns of dangerous times, like when Venus was linked to war or drought. The Maya knew that 5 Venus cycles, 5 times 584 equals 2,920 days, almost equaled 8 solar years. 8 times 365 equals 2,920 days. This match is not perfect. The actual solar year is longer. Over time, the cycles would drift. The Maya knew this. The Venus table includes corrections. It skips a day every few cycles to keep the prediction accurate. This shows they did not just record what they saw. They tested their model and fixed it. This is the mark of true science. The Dresden Codex is one of only 4 surviving Maya books. It was made from the bark of the fig tree. The surface was coated with white lime to make it smooth. The pages were painted with black, red, and blue ink. It was folded like an accordion. The codex was about 3.5 meters long when opened. It contains detailed tables and images of gods. It was likely used by priests in a temple. They would consult it before major events. The eclipse table, for example, lists dates when solar eclipses were likely. It uses a cycle of 177 days, which marks the start of eclipse season. By counting forward from a known eclipse, they could predict future ones. They did not understand the mechanics of eclipses, but they saw the pattern. This knowledge gave them great power. When an eclipse occurred as predicted, people believed the priests had divine insight. The calendar was not just for priests. It shaped daily life for everyone. Farmers used the Haab to plan their year. They planted maize at the start of the rains. They harvested before the dry season. The Haab months helped them stay on schedule. Market days were set by the Tzolk'in. In many towns, markets were held every 20 days, but the exact day rotated through the Tzolk'in. This ensured that no single day became too crowded. It also linked trade to sacred time. Naming children was a serious act. A newborn's Tzolk'in day sign shaped their identity. Parents consulted a priest to learn the meaning of the day. A child born on Simi, the day of death, was not seen as a curse. Death was part of life. Simi was also a day of transformation and rebirth. The child might be given protective charms. They might be trained as a healer or shaman. A child born on Manik, the day of the deer, might be linked to hunting or offerings. Destiny was not fixed. The calendar gave a starting point, but actions mattered. A person could change their fate through rituals, offerings, and good behavior. The calendar showed the challenges. It did not remove them. The Maya also used the calendar to schedule bloodletting rituals. These were acts of devotion. Rulers and nobles would draw blood from their tongues, ears, or genitals. The blood was soaked into paper and burned. The smoke carried the offering to the gods. These rituals were timed to powerful days in the Tolkien. They were believed to open a path to the spirit world. The calendar ensured they happened at the right moment. In all things, the Maya sought balance. The calendar was not just a tool for prediction. It was a guide for living. It taught patience, respect, and attention. It linked the individual to the community, the earth to the sky, the past, present, and future. The cycles turned. The people watched, and in that watching, they found meaning. Rulers used the calendar to legitimize their power. They were not just political leaders. They were intermediaries between the people and the gods. Their actions had to align with sacred time. Coronations, wars, and building projects were timed to auspicious days. A king might launch a war on a day ruled by a war god. He might dedicate a temple when Venus rose in the east. These acts showed the gods were on his side. Monuments called stelae recorded important dates. These were tall stone slabs carved with images and writing. They stood in plazas where everyone could see them. A stela might show a king holding a scepter. Around him, glyphs recorded the date, the event, and the gods involved. The earliest known long count date is on Stela 2 at Chiapa de Corzo, dated to 36 BCE. Most stelae come from the Classic period. They prove the Maya used the long count for centuries. The city of Tikal was a center of calendar knowledge. Located in northern Guatemala, it was one of the largest Maya cities. Its temples rose over 60 meters above the forest. Rulers there built observatories. One structure, Temple 4, may have been aligned with the sunrise on certain days. The city had a system of reservoirs and causeways, but its greatest treasure was knowledge. Scribes in Tikal recorded dates on stelae and in books. They tracked the movements of the moon and planets. They calculated the length of the solar year to within minutes of modern values. Another key site was Copan in western Honduras. Its ruler, Waxacalacun Ubach-Quavil, known as 18 Rabbit, ruled from 695 to 738 CE. He built many stelae. He promoted the calendar and writing. Under his rule, Copan became a center of learning. The city's hieroglyphic stairway contains over 2,000 glyphs. It records the history of the dynasty and its ties to time. The stairway shows how deeply the calendar was tied to power and identity. Calakmul in southern Mexico was a rival of Tikal. It was a powerful city with many allies. Its rulers used the calendar to coordinate attacks. Warfare was not random. It was timed to sacred days. A battle on a day linked to Mars or Venus might be seen as favored by the gods. The defeat of a rival on an unlucky day would prove divine support. Dates of battles were recorded on stelae. The calendar was a tool of war as much as of peace. The accuracy of the Maya calendar came from consistency. They did not change their system. They kept records for centuries. They built on what came before. Each generation added to the knowledge. They used math to correct errors. For example, they knew the solar year was slightly longer than 365 days. They did not add leap days like the Romans, but their Haab was close enough for agricultural use. The Tzolk'in and long count were not affected by solar drift. They ran on their own cycles. The 260-date Tzolk'in remains one of the great puzzles. Why 260? Some scholars believe it is linked to the human gestation period, which is about 260 days. Others think it comes from the time between planting and harvest in parts of Mesoamerica. Another idea is that it combines the 13 numbers with the 20-day names, creating a sacred number. The number 13 was important. It represented the levels of heaven. The number 20 was the total of fingers and toes. Together they formed a cycle that felt complete. The tzolk'in was used in divination. Priests would consult it to answer questions. Would a journey be safe? Should a marriage take place? What offering would please the gods? A day's meaning depended on its number and name. For example, the day Imix with the number 1 might mean new beginnings. The same day with number 13 might be too intense. Priests used tools like crystals or beans to cast lots and find answers. The calendar gave structure to their spiritual practice. The long count allowed the Maya to think in vast stretches of time. They recorded dates thousands of years in the past and future. A ruler might claim descent from a hero who lived many Khatun ago, or he might dedicate a monument to an event in the distant future. This sense of deep time was unique. Most ancient cultures focused on the present or near past. The Maya looked ahead. They believed time was cyclical. Events would repeat. The same forces would return. By tracking time, they could prepare. One of the most famous long count dates is 9.16.3.8.18, recorded on Stela D at Quirigua. It marks a ceremony in 761 CE. The site, in eastern Guatemala, was once a small settlement, but under King Cactileu Chan Yopat, it gained independence from Copan. The stelae at Quirigua are massive, some weigh over 60 tons. They show the king in full regalia. The dates on them assert his power and connection to the gods. The calendar was a political tool. It showed the king ruled in harmony with time. The correlation of the Maya calendar with the modern Gregorian calendar was a major challenge for scholars. How do you match a system based on cycles with one based on linear years? In the 20th century, archaeologists and astronomers worked to solve it. They used records of eclipses, the Venus cycle, and historical events. The most widely accepted correlation is the GMT correlation. It sets the start of the long count at August 11th, 3114 BCE. This has been confirmed by multiple lines of evidence. But not all scholars agreed. Some proposed different correlations. Each one shifted dates by days or years. This caused confusion. If the correlation was wrong, then all the dates on stelae would be off. That would change the timeline of Maya history. The debate was intense. It lasted for decades. The discovery of the Dresden Codex's Venus table helped settle it. The table's predictions matched modern astronomy only under the GMT correlation. This gave strong support to its accuracy. The role of women in the calendar system is less known. Most records focus on kings and priests, but they were involved. Royal women held power. Some were regents, others were priestesses. At the site of Naranjo, a queen named Lady Six Sky restored the dynasty in the early 8th century. She ruled in the name of her son. She commissioned stelae with long count dates. She used the calendar to show her legitimacy. Women also served as midwives and healers. They likely used the tzolk'in to guide births and treatments.
The calendar was not static, it evolved. Early versions may have been simpler. Over time, the system became more complex. The use of zero is one example. The Maya were among the first to use a symbol for zero. It looked like a shell. This allowed them to write large numbers in their long count system. Zero was not just a placeholder. It had mathematical value. This innovation helped them calculate long spans of time with precision. Another innovation was the lunar series. Some stelae include a count of the moon's age. This was part of the long count record. It showed how many days had passed since the last new moon. The Maya tracked 6 lunar months at a time. They knew the lunar cycle was about 29.5 days. They alternated 29 and 30-day months. They also noted when a month was shorter or longer. This level of detail shows their commitment to accuracy. The collapse of the classic Maya civilization around 900 CE is one of history's great mysteries. Cities were abandoned, stelae stopped being carved, writing declined. But the calendar did not disappear. In the northern Yucatan, cities like Chichen Itza and Uxmal continued to thrive. The post-classic period saw new developments. The calendar was still used. The Dresden Codex was likely written during this time. The knowledge survived, even as political power shifted. Chichen Itza had a structure called El Caracol, which may have been an observatory. Its windows aligned with the movements of Venus. The city's rulers continued to use the long count for a time. But later, they shifted to a calendar round system, which combined the Haab and Tzolk'in without the long count. This may have reflected a change in religious or political focus. The full reasons are still unclear. The arrival of the Spanish in the 16th century brought disaster. The Maya books were burned. Priests were killed. Knowledge was lost. Only 4 codices survived. The rest were destroyed by missionaries who saw them as pagan. The calendar was suppressed. But in remote villages, the Tzolk'in and Haab lived on. Some communities still use them today. But during the colonial period, the full system faded from public life. One of the greatest losses was the destruction of the library at Chichen Itza. According to legend, it held thousands of books. When the Spanish came, they burned them. This was not just a loss of texts. It was a loss of centuries of observation, calculation, and tradition. The surviving codices give us clues, but they are fragments. We will never know the full extent of Maya knowledge. Despite the loss, the calendar left a legacy. It showed that a civilization without modern tools could achieve remarkable precision. The Maya did not have iron. They did not have the wheel. They did not use money. But they had math, patience, and a deep connection to the sky. They watched. They counted. They recorded. They built a system that could stand the test of time. The challenge of understanding the Maya calendar was not just technical. It was cultural. Early scholars dismissed it as primitive. They could not believe a Stone Age people could track time so well. They assumed the Maya were passive observers of the sky. But research has shown the opposite. The Maya were active scientists. They tested their models. They corrected errors. They passed knowledge with care. One turning point was the decipherment of Maya writing. For years, the glyphs were unreadable. Scholars thought they were just pictures. In the mid-20th century, a Russian linguist named Yuri Krurazov proved they were a mix of logograms and syllabic signs. This opened the door to reading the stelae and codices. Dates could now be understood in context. Historical events could be placed in time. The calendar became a key to unlocking Maya history. Another turning point was the work of John Eric Thompson, an archaeologist who mapped the correlation between the Maya and Gregorian calendars. His work in the 1920s and 1930s laid the foundation for modern Maya studies. He collected data from sites across the region. He compared inscriptions and astronomical records. His support for the GMT correlation helped unify the field. But controversy remained. Some scholars, like Floyd Lounsbury, challenged parts of Thompson's work. They used eclipse records to test the dates. Others, like David Stewart, advanced the decipherment of glyphs. Each discovery added a piece to the puzzle. The calendar was no longer a mystery. It was a system that could be studied, tested, and admired. The consequences of the Maya calendar go beyond history. It changed how we see ancient civilizations. It showed that science and religion could coexist. The Maya did not separate them. For them, tracking Venus was both an astronomical act and a religious duty. The calendar was a bridge between Earth and sky. It was a way to live in harmony with the cosmos.